Well, Shabbat Shalom, welcome to 2025 at Kol Hadash. I know it's been 2025 outside of here for the last 9 days. Happy or not, we'll have to see. But it's a great pleasure to welcome you back to our Shabbat services here in Deerfield, but also online. We have 16 screens joining us tonight remotely. I'm sure some are family of our guest artists tonight as well. It's a great pleasure to welcome here the Stereotypes, an a cappella group from Washington University in St. Louis. And for those who are online, I will give them a sneak peek at the group. They are in fact here. In the meantime, we'll be celebrating Shabbat along with appreciating the music that they're here to bring us. So it's a great pleasure to have them here. Thanks to Noah Apley, one of the leaders in the group who grew up in our congregation, and this is part of their winter tour. So we're pleased to be a stop on the, not quite the Eras tour, but still a valuable contribution to the community. So I'm going to start by sharing our service on the screen projected here. You should be able to see it online as well. I'll get rid of all the random black boxes that Zoom adds to everything. And we'll start with a song that celebrates the coming of Shabbat and the fact that we simply are together to be able to sing and experience the world. The words, such as they are bim bam, bim 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 bam, and Shabbat Shalom. So as you feel comfortable, please join me. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Just hum. Shabbat is a time of new beginnings, a time of hope. Our week is filled with expectations and obligations. We plan, we work, we think, we do. We are so busy working and doing that we don't see the big picture. We are so busy getting where we are going that we forget where we are. Shabbat is a chance to stop and catch our breath. We celebrate our connections with each other. We look back at our past and look forward to our future. We look into ourselves and look out onto the world around us. When the week starts again, we are refreshed and renewed by our moment of pause. We find a new hope for the days and weeks ahead. Shabbat is a time of new beginnings, a time of hope. At this time, I'll invite our music director, Ellen Apley, to step to the microphone and invite our Oneg hosts this evening, Lori and Kathy, to come forward and light our Shabbat candles as we sing Baruch HaOr, Let Us Light These Lights.
Let us light these lights and see the way to love, and let us say Ahava. Let us light these lights and see the way to peace, and let us say Shalom. Let us light these lights and see the way to peace, and let us say Shalom. And let us say Shalom.
And now, after we take a moment of silence, we will have a chance to hear a musical reflection on the concept of silence presented by our special guests. And so I invite us first to take a moment of silent reflection. Sometimes that 30 seconds of silence, of stopping, of Shabbat is perhaps the most meaningful part of the service. Depends on the service, I guess. So now I'd like to welcome our guests to come forward and present the sound of silence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly is beginning. Let it cease while our hearts sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. The rest of the streams I once loved, now are wasted we find our very sweet life. Come to the falling town, and my eyes are fast by the fast shining on just when the night the light and storm, 10,000 people anymore, talking without speaking, hearing without saying, abiding in thoughts that voices never share. No one tells till they go. Said I will not do. Silence like a take my arms and I might you. And my words like silent raindrops. I'm feeling dark it's like I was wondering, words and it was wondering, and the sign said the words of prophets already on the subway
In Jewish life, we create community in many ways. Sometimes it's sharing ideas, sometimes it's sharing our voices and singing together, as we did with our Nigun at the beginning of the service. Sometimes it's the sharing of sustenance, food and drink, that helps to create community. And so when we celebrate Shabbat, this moment in the week, every week, it's a chance for community. It's also a chance for us to share the fruit of the vine and to share that connection to the natural world that makes this possible. And so this evening I'll sing our Humanistic Kiddush in Hebrew, and then we can say the English all together. Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Borei pri hagafen. In English, blessed is the light in the world, blessed is the light of humanity that brings forth the fruit of the vine. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life. And so now, one of our pieces in repertoire in Kol Hadash is called Amar Rabbi Akiva, which turns back to the pages of the Talmud when Rabbi Akiva said that the core identity, the core value of being a good person and a good Jew is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so we have a special trio to present that today. To be Jewish is to be an heir to Jewish traditions. But what does it mean to be an heir? An heir is not an archivist, a museum curator whose responsibility is to preserve the past as it was. Inheritance is a gift from the past to the present, and that gift now belongs to today, to adopt or adapt or even abandon as it chooses. We hear the voices of the past, and we also feel our own desires, live our own values, make our own choices. We learn from the wisdom of our ancestors, and we add our own insights. After all, one day the present will give its gifts to the future, and the cycle of acceptance and evolution and creation will begin all over again. And now we'll hear the ideas of that paragraph presented in song with the song, Any Way You Want It.
Any way you want it, that's the way you need it. Any way you want it. She loves the light, she loves the sing, she loves everything. She loves to bust, loves to move, loves to grow, she loves to love, she loves to. Anyway you want it, that's the way you need it. Anyway you want it. She said anyway you want it, that's the way you need it. Anyway you want it. Anyway you want it, that's the way you need it. Anyway you want it. Yeah, she said anyway you want it, that's the way you need it. Anyway you want it. So anyway you want it, that's the way you need it. Anyway you want it. So
October party. Streaked with gold, at last the lingering willow stands ready to join the consensus of the cottonwoods and maples that it is time to yield its leaves to the wind. We should all part in this way, cut cleanly, land softly, and leave behind a promise of renewal in the bud that stays. If I could ask you all to please stand for just a moment, if you're comfortable doing so. When we gather on Shabbat, we pause also to reflect on the community of the present and the past, to remember those of our loved ones who are no longer an active and living part of our life, and also to recognize those who are facing loss and are mourning even as we speak today. In the last 8 days, I've officiated at 3 funerals. One for Howard Jacobs, a founding member of our congregation who died at 99. One for Daniel Creamer, a student at the University of Chicago who died at 21. And one for Merrill Mitchell, who died at 88, and whose funeral was today. Each of us know people who are facing mourning and loss. Of course, our thoughts turn to Los Angeles and the disaster there, and disasters in other corners of the world. And so I invite us to pause for a moment of silent reflection, to feel our empathy for those who are mourning, to feel the love for our loved ones who are no longer with us, to pause in silent tribute. In the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Proverbs, we read, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of a good person is a blessing to us. Please be seated as we hear our next song. Well, at this point in our Shabbat services, conventionally we have some special music focused on the theme of the sermon or the celebration. In this case, the special music is celebrating the people who are here to join us in song and lead us in musical appreciation. The Stereotypes from Washington University. I feel odd as a rabbi introducing the Stereotypes as a sing. I have to say it out loud. And the 3 songs that they'll be singing now for us are Whose Woods, you may recognize the poem from which this piece comes, Holding Out for a Hero, which might be what we're looking for in 2025, and I Was Here, the legacy we might like to leave behind. His house is in the village. He will not see me stopping here to watch his words fill up with snow. I need a hero. Where all the good men are, where all the stars, where the sweet lights Mercury to fight the rising stars. Isn't there a white every night I toss and I turn, I dream of the way. I need a hero to the end of the night. Who's got a say I need a hero till the morning somewhere just beyond my reach, there's somewhere to that be. Racing through the thunder, rising with the heat. Just a good man to sweep me off my feet.
need a hero. I need a hero. I need a hero. I need a hero. Someone watching me. Hero to the end of the night. Maybe I'll ride like twain clothes. Maybe I'll think like that go. You're the common cold. I don't know, but I'm ready to start, 'cause I know in my heart I want to do something that matters. Say something different, something that sets the whole world on its ear. I want to do something better with the time I've been given, and I want to try to touch a few hearts in this life, leave nothing less than something that says I was here. I will prove you wrong. If you think I'm all wrong, you're in for a shock, 'cause the stream's too strong, and your score's too long. Maybe I'll come symphonies, maybe I'll find the world peace, 'cause I know it's my destiny to leave more than a trace of myself in this place. I want to do something that matters, say something different, something that sets the whole world on its ear. I want to do something better with the time I've been given, and I want to try to touch a few hearts in this life, leave nothing less than something that says I was here. I was here. I want to do something that matters, say something different, something that sets the whole world on its ear. I want to do something better with the time I've been given, and I know that I will do more than just pass through this life. I'll leave nothing less than something that says I was here. I was here. I was here.
How do you tell the story of a whole year in less than 2 hours? Well, there's a lot of ways you can try to break it down. There are different areas of life you can focus on. If you're particularly interested in which celebrities died in the last 12 months, I have the People magazine yearbook that lists them all, the last several pages. I'm not going to talk about it. Although there were several that I said, they were alive? But I do have some other ways to look at the year, to ask key questions about what happened and perhaps to get some hints of what might happen in the year just begun. What do these companies all have in common? True Value Hardware, TGI Fridays, Spirit Airlines, Tupperware, Party City, and Red Lobster. They all went bankrupt or declared bankruptcy during the last year. Some of them reorganized to reopen, some of them closed forever. This is our challenge in the new year, of course, because it was big news when it happened. It's not forgotten by the people that worked there who lost their jobs. But it's simply one of thousands and thousands of stories, both uplifting and sad, that have crossed our news feeds in 2024. Here's another list of names. Let's see if you can figure out what these people have in common. Stephen Nedorosik, Anthony Amirati, Yusuf Dicek, Imani Khalif, Rachel Gunn, and Snoop Dogg. They were all participants that we knew about in the Olympics this summer. Stephen Nedorosik was a pommel horse specialist who wore horn-rimmed glasses and is a very nerdy mechanical engineer. Anthony Amirati is the French pole vaulter who was undone by a different pole, so to speak. Yusuf Dicek was the Turkish target shooter that seemed so impressive because he was so chill. Imani Khalif is an Algerian boxer. She's a woman boxer, a female boxer who was accused of being male. Rachel Gunn, an Australian breakdancer. You may remember her special move. And Snoop Dogg, well, he's a rapper who became even more famous, if you could imagine, by being a very enthusiastic host for every event he could possibly cover. Some other names from 2024 that you might recall or you might not. Daniel Penny. Remember Daniel Penny? In 2023, Daniel Penny was on the New York subway, and there was a man going around very threatening to the people on the subway, and so Penny put him into a chokehold to try to subdue him and ultimately killed him. The question is, this man who was suffering from mental illness, was this murder, was this manslaughter, or was this a good Samaritan trying to save the people who were threatened by this person on the subway? Well, Daniel Penny was acquitted in December. Brian Thompson. He's the CEO of United Healthcare. Now, if I had said Luigi Mangione, everybody would know him. He's the one who shot him and became a folk hero to some. Ahmed al-Sharb. I'll give you another hint. He's also known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani. Did that help? That's right. He's the new head of the government in Syria, part of an Islamist faction that managed to conquer Damascus and expel the Assad family after 53 years of that family being in charge of the country in a dictatorship, a brutal dictatorship. But now the question is, what happens next? Do the Islamists reform and all of a sudden see the democratic light? Or do they try to impose the Islamist regime they always imagined they would? After all, this man and this organization he runs is on the U.S. terrorism watch list currently. Thomas Matthew Crooks. Thomas Matthew Crooks is a bad shot. He was the near-miss assassin in Butler, Pennsylvania. Spawned conspiracy theories, by the way, on both sides of the political aisle, that he was a secret mole from some cabal trying to kill Trump, or it was a setup to make Trump look sympathetic. I heard it on both sides. This was a banner year for conspiracy theories, by the way, from the plot that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift would get engaged at the Super Bowl so that it would then lead to an endorsement of Joe Biden, and it was all a conspiracy. There were claims that Kamala Harris's rally crowds were fake or paid. There was a story about Haitian immigrants in Ohio eating the dogs and eating the cats. And now, drones over New Jersey. I think moon over Miami has a better sound to it than drones over New Jersey, but that's me. Tony Hinchcliffe. Anyone know Tony Hinchcliffe? He runs a comedy show called Kill Tony, which is all about crude and rude insults. He spoke at the Trump rally and made a terrible joke about Puerto Rico. He was emblematic of this bro culture that was tapped into by Donald Trump, and it also showed you the power of media influencers over traditional media. Joe Rogan and his podcast get 14.5 million listeners. The major networks' nightly news, 1 million viewers each. Hirsch Goldberg Poland. Yes, one of the Israeli hostages, also an American citizen via his parents. His parents spoke, in fact, at one of the presidential conventions, and he was killed by his captors when they were almost rescued. The captors felt better that they die than be saved. The question that remains for Israel is the same question it's been since last November. Should there be a hostage deal that ends the war? Or must Israel destroy Hamas and the threat from Gaza permanently at any cost, including the cost of all the hostages? Or will Israel never trust anything in Gaza and simply reoccupy it forever? These are the battles being held in the halls of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, on the streets in America as well. How to end the war? What should the end be? There's no consensus. Haimani James. Haimani James is a student, or was a student, at Columbia University. During the Gaza Solidarity encampment, it became known that in January he had said that Zionists don't deserve to live. In April, at the height of the protests, when this video became prominent and it didn't look so good, he said, "I'm sorry, I misspoke, I was having a bad week, and I regret it." And a couple months later, by the way, he retracted the apology for what he had said. What we saw over the spring, especially, were pro-Hamas slogans, harassing students simply trying to get to class on campus, on dozens of campuses. Now, despite fears that the summer would lead to more organizing and even worse experiences in the fall, that hasn't materialized. The fall has been much quieter, and there are certainly bitter online debates. There has still been, of course, vandalism at Jewish sites and other incidents like that we've seen. There's been anti-Muslim sentiment as well. A lot of the statements and reports coming out of what happened in the spring highlight the fact that both sides faced threats, intimidation, and even violence. Looking back over 2024, Taylor Swift completed her global tour that earned over $1 billion, the first tour to earn over $1 billion. And she also continued her self-empowerment. You know, she's re-recording all of her songs so that she owns the masters and can get the lion's share of the revenue from. Do you know that we had the first woman of color as a major party presidential candidate? Caitlin Clark revolutionized perceptions of women's basketball by setting the NCAA career scoring record for both men and women, by the way, although some would quibble and say Pete Maravich didn't have the three-point line and she did. Okay. You want to argue, you can argue. But she continued her success in the WNBA, setting a league record for assists in a season as a rookie. However, increasing the profile of women's sports has also led to women's sports being weaponized, stoking racial tension over Clark and her rivals or her teammates or her opponents, and some jealousy over the high profile she received despite the benefits coming to the entire league. She did not make the Olympic team, by the way. And of course, there was the great and never-ending hullabaloo over trans women athletes, including, but definitely not limited to, that Algerian boxer. We've also had more revelations of massive sexual abuse by P. Diddy, aka Sean Combs. The terrible case in France, I don't know if you follow this, a woman named Giselle Picot was drugged by her husband and then raped by dozens of men over the course of a decade while she was unconscious. And of course, Kamala Harris lost the election to Donald Trump, so it wasn't all up on the women's side. Now, we don't need to rehash the election season at great length here, though of course it was such a huge part of the year. From the last gasps of the Republican primaries that Trump ignored and still swamped everybody, from Ron DeSantis to Nikki Haley, the controversies over Biden's competence in February with the Robert Hur report on classified documents that described him, and this was a quote, "a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory." The Democrats were furious. How dare he, how dare he, how dare he, until the June debate. And then, maybe a problem here. Liberalism in general has been on the retreat. In Russia, longtime opposition figure Alexei Navalny died in prison. This was in February. The official cause of death announced by the Kremlin was sudden death syndrome. Most countries have seen left-wing or center-left governments pay the price for post-COVID inflation, anti-immigrant sentiment, impatience with environmental regulation, and more. And the seeming progress of 2020 was being demonized in 2024. Some of the rejected acronyms. CRT, critical race theory, terrible. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, awful. When there's a plane crash, they blame it on DEI. When there are fires in Los Angeles, they blame it on anything to demonize DEI. And of course, that ever-growing acronym, LGBTQIAA++, I think 2 pluses now. By the way, it represents 8% of the population who self-identify as some variety of queer as the umbrella term, which is up. In 2012, it was only 4%. So in 12 years, 4% more either have identified that way or feel comfortable publicly identifying that way. Remember that slogan? Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you. That will be one of the more famous political slogans out there. From the Daisy counting down bomb commercial, that one will be on that list. Kamala is for they, them. Trump is for you. Of course, any election where the country's on the wrong track has 70% agreeing, when food inflation and housing inflation has gone up, and all that people see is spending billions of dollars on electric car charging stations. I have an electric car. I like the charging stations, but I understand why people might have an objection. The U.S. criminal justice system was under the microscope this year. All those Trump prosecutions that, in the end, were delayed and derailed into oblivion. All those January 6th offenders may yet be pardoned. And Hunter Biden's humiliation, prosecution, conviction, and then a surprise pardon at the end of the year. Santa Claus brought a gift. Alec Baldwin was acquitted for accidentally shooting 2 people on a movie set. Florida Representative Matt Gaetz is finally out of Congress, and the Ethics Committee actually released the report on his prostitution and drug use transgressions at the end of the year, though now he's contemplating a run for governor of Florida. So he is gone but not forgotten. Francis Scott Key was in the news, not because of the national anthem, but because of the bridge in Baltimore that's named after him that was hit by a cargo ship and knocked over, killing 6 workers and derailing one of the major ports in the country. You may remember there was another solar eclipse in April. Maybe you had a chance to see it. But there was also the massive Hurricane Helene that devastated parts of Florida and North Carolina, killing over 200 people, and yes, leading to more conspiracy theories about whether nefarious people were controlling the weather or were choosing who got relief distributed to them. And then Hurricane Milton just 2 weeks later hit Florida a second time. In news of the Jews, well, the conflict between Iran and Israel shifted from a proxy war to a hot war with direct missile and airplane strikes back and forth. But the proxies were also hit. The Houthis in Yemen, even just this week, and Hezbollah in Lebanon. First, their leadership was crippled by the exploding pagers, which I have to say was a rather genius spycraft maneuver. But also airstrikes hitting their highest leaders, hitting their neighborhoods, their weapons stores. And this included Hassan Nasrallah, who had led Hezbollah since 1992. As for Hamas, their head, Ismail Haniyeh, had been leading them for 15 years, first inside Gaza and then beyond. He was assassinated in Tehran, of all places, in July. And then the commander in Gaza itself, Yahya Sinwar, was killed in October. He was not only the head of Hamas in Gaza, he conceived of and executed the massacre of October 7th that led to this conflict, if you want to choose that as a starting point. And yet that war on Gaza grinds on, no end, no resolution in sight. We keep hearing promises, we're really close to a deal, we're really close to a deal. But I don't know that either side can bridge the gap with what the other's minimum would be. And the civilian casualties rise, and the aid workers are facing violence as well, intentional, accidental, human shield, who knows? The education and healthcare infrastructure is collapsed, and still no one can tell us what's the end goal. What will happen the day after? No one from Hamas has an answer. No one from Israel is willing to say what they want, and I don't think they agree, and they have no clear answer, otherwise they would have said it. And with this ongoing burden of the war now into its second year, there are tensions within Jewish-Israeli society over who serves. The casualty rate among religious Zionists has been very high. And the coalition agreement between the religious Zionist parties, who are some of the most belligerent and jingoistic, and the ultra-Orthodox parties, who refuse to serve, is beginning to fray. We don't know what that will prove in 2025. Now, for Jews outside of Israel, we've had to deal with anti-Semitism and Israel criticism. And what's the line between the two? Whether it was on college campuses, both in public spaces and in academic departments, even classes, public protests on public streets, graffiti and vandalism, occasionally violence too. And we see continued episodes throughout the year in Australia, in the UK, and Canada, even in the US. You may recall hearing about a book talk scheduled in New York City that was canceled by an employee of the bookstore who decided Zionists are not welcome here. And the irony was, the book was by an author who himself is critical of American Zionism. It's because his interviewer was a prominent liberal Zionist, willing to criticize Israel, but not willing to say there should be no Israel. Therefore, event, person, canceled. In more progressive spaces, it has been tricky, finding that line between Israel critical and crossing the line. But we've also, of course, seen the old-fashioned anti-Semitism we're used to, of Nazis marching in the street in Ohio. What else defined 2024? We had a continued explosion of artificial intelligence. Professors today despair of assigning essays because what's the point? It's back to blue books. Or I like the idea of having a typewriter lab where all the students come in and they have to type their essays on a typewriter because there's no way to hack it. We had They're not happy? Okay. Look, my daughter's college, it happened that ChatGPT was down for like 36 hours during exams, and everybody was panicking. What am I supposed to do? Think? Oh, no. We also, of course, saw writers suing because they find their works are being used to train the AI and sometimes spitting out what they wrote without any credit or payment. And even James Cameron, the director, who warned us about the dangers of AI in 1984 with the movie The Terminator, he joined the corporate board of an AI company in 2024. Now, in some surveys cited in The Week magazine, 75% of Americans fear that AI will take American jobs, and 39% think it could be used to wipe out humanity, but 44% use it very regularly. There was even a scandal with the British royal family involving an AI picture that was manipulated to hide the Queen's or future Queen's cancer treatment. Someday, AI will actually figure out how many fingers we have, and then the deep fake pictures will become a deep problem. More surveys suggest that only 31% of Americans trust the mainstream media to report the news accurately and fairly. And again, I hear complaints from both sides about that. Meanwhile, 37% trust the information they get on social media. And finally, this one is both funny and sad. 42% of people said they would rather live in a genuinely haunted house than next door to outspoken conservatives. And 36% feel the same about living next to outspoken progressives. So it goes both ways. Obviously, ghosts are less scary. Now, I still haven't given you any predictions for 2025. We call them prophecies, even though I'm not a prophet. What did I project for 2024? After all, each year I look back at what I said last year in January, and let's see how I did. I made 4 predictions. First, I predicted that Israel will be forced to stop fighting in Gaza before it is satisfied that Hamas is destroyed. Wrong. Although the dilemma, the alternatives of save what hostages are left and stop the fighting, or keep fighting and risk the hostages and more civilians, that dilemma is still there. It's the same one. It's not changed. Just many more dead a year later. Second prediction, when the fighting stops in Gaza, explicit anti-Semitism will decline, but there will still be some hard questions left. Well, it still hasn't stopped, so TBD. I'll be a little generous. Third, this U.S. election season is going to be terrible. Ding, ding, ding. Although, I'm not a genius for predicting that, right? Anyone might have guessed that. And at the end of that prediction, I said, I'm not going to call a winner because we will all be losers. Well, that came true too. And last prediction, there will always be reason for joy and hope if you look hard enough. Yes, and no, and maybe TBD again. There's a myth out there that the Chinese leader Mao Zedong was asked for his opinion on the French Revolution in the 1970s. And he responded, it's too soon to tell. Didn't actually happen, but that's okay. Now, will 2025 be worse than 2024? Well, I hear some votes. For undocumented immigrants, I fear yes. For transgender Americans of all ages, children and adults, no question. Now, if we are not these groups that have been targeted, and we care about them, then it will be a very bad year for us too. For the secular facing a resurgent Christian nationalism, there will be a lot of work to do. Our stock portfolios may rise, our tax rates may stay low or even go down, but at what cost to the social fabric? There will be a lot of lawsuits. Sad to say, there will be more mass shootings. There will be more technology challenges, but what else is new? This is just a smattering of what happened in 2024 and what might happen in 2025. And I have to say, it was not all bad. The Week magazine has a wonderful section, every issue, called It Wasn't All Bad. And we need that news too. We had the first successful pig-to-human kidney transplant from a genetically modified pig. That would be a lifeline to the 90,000 Americans who are on kidney transplant lists. A pygmy hippo named Mu Dang became a celebrity. There's been wonderful music and movies and television and writing, creativity coming out, certainly since the end of the writer's strike in September 2023. Just think of your favorites from 2024. What were the books you read that moved you? What were the movies you saw that left you breathless? They happened. And I have to say, I had a book published in 2024. That was a good year for me, at least in that respect. It came out 6 weeks earlier. It should have been January 1st, showed up before Thanksgiving. I'm happy. Well, babies were born. Loving partnerships were celebrated. And long and successful lives drew to a close. As I mentioned earlier in our service, I officiated at 3 funerals over the last 8 days. One was a 21-year-old college student, a total tragedy. Another was an 88-year-old who survived diabetes for over 55 years. She lived a well and exciting life and was loving and loved by her family. And the third was a member of our congregation, Howard Jacobs. He was a 99-year-old veteran of World War II, where he served as a medic. He was able to run a successful business for many years as an artistic creator of corporate displays. I mean, how many artists are not starving and actually have a business? That was him. And again, a loving family, loving friends. That's a successful life that deserves to be celebrated whenever it is accomplished, like a symphony that must end to appreciate how truly beautiful it was. What I wish for you is that your 2025 turn out just that well. Once again, I want to thank our special guests, the Stereotypes, for the beautiful music they provided. Give them one more round of applause for a great job. Thank you, thank you. And to conclude our service, we have a song that celebrates being together and hopefully celebrating good things together in the future. It is Hine Matov. Those who know it, please do join Ellen and I in singing it. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim. La 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 la. Hine Matov u'manayim. La 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 la. Hine Matov u'manayim. Hine Matov u'manayim. Hine Matov u'manayim. La 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 la. Hine Matov u'manayim. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim. Once more, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, and please turn and wish Shabbat Shalom to the people sitting near you.